Oh, sorry. Start again. Good morning and welcome. Welcome to this planning application board. The chair has given his apologies, and for that reason, I, as vice chair, will chair the meeting. Can I remind you that the meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Comhairle's website following the meeting. And for those joining the meeting on Teams, please ensure that your microphones are muted, and if you are a member of the Planning Applications Board, please keep your cameras on. We'll start off by with the minutes of the meeting of the 2nd of December 2025, and these are for approval, for accuracy. Thank you. Declaration of interest is item 2, and members are asked to declare any interest they may have in any items on the agenda. It would be helpful if members explained why they are declaring an interest in these items concerned.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm declaring an interest in item 4. So I am a member of the HHP board as a director, so we'll leave the meeting when item 4 starts.
Very good, thank you. And any other declarations? No, okay, in that case, item 3 on the agenda is planning permission to install access road, change of use of land to site caravan pod, install private wastewater system at 10 Neep Uig, Isle of Lewis. Now, can I remind members on the planning committee that you need to consider if you have preempted the decision making process by declaring support or opposition for the application in advance of the meeting, or by lobbying other members for a particular outcome before being able to participate in any planning decision. Any motion or amendment in relation to a planning application must be based solely on planning reasons. And if a member moves an amendment, the chair will invite him or her to clearly articulate the amendment and the planning reasons upon which it is based. A copy of the timeout protocol has been made available to all members via the Planning Applications Board folder on SharePoint. The planning officer will present the recommendations of officers, and in the event of a member seeking to move an amendment, the chair may call upon the legal advisor or the planning advisor to provide advice to the board. So, as I said, the first thing on the agenda is planning permission to install access road, change or use of land to site caravan pod, install private wastewater system at 10 Uig, Isle of Lewis. This planning application is considered by the appointed officer to raise sensitive issues and is therefore referred to the board for a decision. Helen MacDonald will speak to the report and answer any questions. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a planning application, a detailed planning application to install an access road, the change of use of land to site a caravan pod, and to install a private wastewater system at 10 Neep Uig, Isle of Lewis. So I'll just take you through some contextual slides to show you where the site is, a summary of the policy, an assessment, other material planning considerations, and our conclusion. So as you can see there, the site is located on the Baltus Peninsula in Uig, over on the west side of the island. And to take that view in a bit more, you can see the site there within the applicant's croft outlined in red, the village of Neep to the northwest, Tynaberry just to the east, west of the site, sorry, east of the site, and the village of Reith is further to the south. The proposed development, a wee summary for you. It's a detailed planning application. The planning permission is for an access, change use of land to site a caravan pod, and the installation of a private wastewater system. Further information that would generally be required, such as an otter survey for this particular site, has not been sought on account of the recommendation for refusal based on location. The development site is approximately 0.14 of a hectare, 0.1 of that for the positioning of the caravan pod and other infrastructure, and the remainder for a vehicular access from the public road. The nearest residential properties are in the village of Neep, which is separated from the site by raised landform at a distance of about half a kilometre. The application site topography itself, it is somewhat uneven, with a raised and sloping site for the permanent caravan pod and a drop-in level across the access back towards the public road. The ground cover is Magher grassland. To the south, east of the site is a low-lying waterlogged marshy area with rocky moorland and raised ground beyond. Just to show you the application site, as you can see, it's got an access crossing some grazing land. The rectangular shape is the proposed position for the caravan, parking and other associated infrastructure, and the smaller red line coming through the applicant's croft to the watery area would be the final discharge for the private wastewater treatment system. And I zoom in showing the proposed site layout there. You can see the proposed caravan unit outlined in grey, the parking area, private wastewater system and the access heading back towards the public road. There's some planning history on the site. The application relates to the same site, which has been the subject of 3 previous planning applications. 1 was withdrawn and 2 were presented to the board and refused by the Planning Applications Board. They related the same site, with the most recent application including the same proposed access. However, these applications were for a house and the current application is for the permanent siting of a static caravan. The most recent refusal was appealed to the Scottish Government Department for Planning and Environmental Appeals, and the refusal was upheld in their decision of the 11th of April last year. Just to give you some context from the previous sites you've looked at, the current application is on the left there, the most recent refusal and application centre, and the original application presented to the board on the right. That one had a slightly different access route. To give you some context for the ground cover, there's an aerial shot here. You can see the tail end of the village of Neep on the top left of the slide. The application site indicated with a red mark, also on the top left, but a bit more to the centre. You can see the rocky ground that surrounds the Trynaberry Special Area of Conservation. You can see Trynaberry Beach with the Magher to the rear. And a more zoomed in version. On this one, you can see the Magher grassland, Trynaberry Beach, and you can also see the Reef Caravan site and facilities building, which sits between the public road and the shoreline. Not in use at the time of the aerial shot, but as you can see, it covers most of that area in the bottom right-hand side of the slide. Key concerns and locational issues with the site. It is located southeast of the settlement of Neep, opposite Trynaberry Beach. It's on undeveloped Magher land within a designated special area of conservation for Magher. It is out with the settlement in relation to the spatial strategy of the local development plan. The surrounding ground is largely grazing with some parcels of fenced croftland. Magher common grazing between the public road and the beach, as noted previously, is consented for use as a seasonal caravan site. For some more policy context, which has gone into more detail in the report, the site has been assessed as out with settlement, and the description of these areas and the policy is as follows. They act as separation between settlements to help retain distinctiveness. They have some local and strategic resource functions, supporting a range of development activities and largely non-residential uses. These include agriculture, recreation activities, mineral extraction, energy development, as well as sometimes storage and waste depots. Generally, these areas have dispersed settlement and a more open landscape, encompassing various landscape character types, with Magher, moorland and some upland character. Development proposals are likely to be mainly resource or tourism based, and there may be a capacity for a limited amount of development where siting and design are critical to mitigate impacts on landscape. A key extract for this particular application is that all development proposals will be assessed against the capacity of the surrounding landscape to accommodate the development. Development proposals should avoid raised or high-level locations to minimise visual impact, and supplementary information may be required to support this early in the application process. So those are just some policy extracts that are gone into in detail in the report. We've mentioned the special area of conservation throughout the application assessment report. It is for Comhairle ground, and it is the only designated area for this in Lewis and Harris. You can see it outlined in purple there, and the site indicated with the arrow in the top left portion. Two representations were received in relation to the application. A summary of the points raised are as follows. They note that the site is in an undeveloped Comhairle area out with settlement. The potential for negative precedent would be set if development approved in the area. Concerns over whether the development met the definition of a caravan, and the potential impact on ecology from wastewater, impact on protected species such as corncrake, and impact on the integrity of the landscape and Comhairle area. The applicant did submit views on these, and that is contained in Appendix 5 to the report. Key planning issues that were considered in the report. The site was subject to refusal by the Planning Application Board twice in recent years. This is a material consideration that carries significant weight, and there have been no policy changes since the site was last considered. The Comhairle Development Strategy sets out the spatial strategy to guide the location of development, i.e. where development should and should not be located, and the principles behind it. The site is out with settlement, and development would require to integrate and achieve a sympathetic fit with surrounding landscape to be considered. Again, the site is on a Comhairle special area of conservation. It is remote from the existing developed portion of Neep Village. It is considered that development of the site could have harm to the landscape character, and that has the potential to set an undesirable precedent for further development in the locality. Just to draw your attention to any procedural matters should the Comhairle be of a different view to the recommendations of the report. If the Comhairle is of the view that the proposed development of this location could potentially be supported by the plan, further information would be required to complete a planning assessment. And these include finalised flood risk mitigation. Please excuse my typo in there, it should be the site and finished ground levels. Archaeological predetermination evaluation would be required. Demonstration of compliance with the definition of a caravan. Also, the submission of a biodiversity statement required by National Planning Framework 4, and consideration of impacts on protected species, in this instance an absence and presence survey for otter. This additional information has not been requested, as it's been assessed that the proposal would not comply with the settlement strategy, placemaking and design policy, landscape and caravan policies also. As such, it's concluded that prior to consideration of these other issues, the proposal would not be in accordance with the development plan. Just lost my last slide. Anyway, so there we go. Thank you. Sorry. So just so you can see the site again in its wider context, and happy to take any questions on the report, Chair.
Thank you, Helen, for that concise report. We are no strangers to the site. Has anybody got any questions or observations? So the recommendation is at 3.1. That is for refusal for the reasons set out in Appendix 1 of this report. Do members agree the recommendation at 3.1 that the planning application be refused for the reasons set out in Appendix 1? Agreed. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. On to item 2 on the agenda. This is a planning permission to construct 46 houses and associated access roads, air source heat pumps and surface water drainage systems, SUDS, phase development at Scott Road, Tarbert, Eilean, Harris. This planning application is classed as a major development under the Town and Country Planning Heresy of Development Scotland Regulations 2009. The application cannot be determined under delegated powers and in accordance with the scheme of delegation is therefore referred to the board to make a recommendation to Comhairle on the application. Comhairle will consider the application at its meeting tomorrow. Mark Ferguson will speak to the report and answer the questions. Mark. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The Chair says that introductory slide sets out the nature of the planning application, which is for a major development in terms of the planning hierarchy. The slide sets out the location of the general location of the site. It's located to the northwest of Scott Road on the edge of the existing village of Tarbert. Members may wish to note the relationship of the development to the main street, which runs, which is identified by the yellow and green route. The main road runs along Main Street and heading out towards Scalpay, where you can see Harris House located on the slide is the location of McQueen Street, a social housing development. There is a games court midway on the kind of northwest between McQueen Street and Scott Road, which is the other densely populated street just to the northwest. You can see just on the centre of the slide a telecommunications mast, and over to the west 2 reservoirs identified in blue, and the area on the hill beyond the telecommunications mast all the way to the north is common grazings land going up onto the hillside there. For members less familiar, on the approach to Tarbert from the south, as you descend from the Caw into the village of Tarbert, the pier is to your right, the distillery is in the foreground there. The main street is running along the centre of the slide, all the way to the right there. And up the top, on the kind of more elevated part of the village, is Scott Road. Scott Road has private, mainly bungalows to the south, and towers around to provide, and it's the main access to a social housing development that was probably built in the late 50s, early 60s, Swedish houses, and the telecommunications mast is a useful reference point. So just to say a bit more about the site and the location, it forms part of a large area of common grazing land. The entire site extends to 13 acres, but only 50% of that area will be developed for housing. The remainder will be land that is used for landscaping, drainage, and for biodiversity enhancement. It's proposed that this new development would be serviced by an estate road from a junction with Scott Road. The land within the site is sloping in 2 directions. At its highest point at the north, it's about 44 metres above Ordnance Datum, and it slopes down to 27 metres at its lowest point. In common with the rest of Harris, the site is within the South Lewis, Harris and North Uist National Scenic Area. There is an overhead line that crosses through the site. It would be partially undergrounded as part of the proposal. And there are 2 freshwater reservoirs further to the west of the site that were formerly Scottish water reservoirs before the water supply for Harris was upgraded, and they currently provide the water supply to the Isle of Harris distillery. The development itself, as was covered in the introductory slide, 46 dwellings. Work undertaken in 2 phases. First phase would incorporate the groundworks for the entire site, a small play area, and it would also be the build of the first 24 dwellings, along with the access and estate road. Second phase would be the construction of 22 dwellings on the formerly prepared site and the roads and footpaths relating to those developments. The development itself would be connected to the public water supply, to the public sewer, and the surface water drainage would be to a suds basin within the site. There is a proposal for a footpath link at the east end of the site to connect into the far end of Scott Road, which would allow connection onto the street at that end and access to an existing play area with the developer to provide upgraded equipment within that existing play area. There's also a requirement to maintain access to the remainder of the common grazing land from the far end of the development, so there would be a gate access into the common grazing land. The site just sets out in a bit of detail the development as it would be were it completed, so this slide sets out both phases of the development. So, and maybe just take members through some kind of particular points of reference. So first of all, on the top left, you can see outlined in blue the one of the 2 reservoirs. So that's the bottom or the more southerly reservoir that I referred to earlier. You can see the hammerhead coming off, and that would provide gated access into the existing common, the remainder of the common grazing land. If we come all the way south, the new access proposed is between the Coast Guard station and number 1 Scott Road. That access would come up over the hill. To the left of the access road, you can see like a rectangle there. That is the telecommunications mast. So the proposed access road would pass to the right of the telecommunications mast. So it would rise to the top where the communications mast is sited, and then it would drop down to the back, so the site falls away as you move further north from the peak of the telecoms mast. Other aspects to the where you see the road heading north into the second phase of development, so that's further to the north, there is to be a small play area, a grassed play area. I don't think the pointer works, Fiona, does it? So if you go to the far end, to the left, and go up, come to the right where you see the green.
There it is.
Yeah, here. So this would be like a small play area. Then if you come further to the right, this is the suds basin in green, and there would be a footpath link coming off that area, coming down onto Scott Road. And then that would lead to the play area, which you can see just further to slightly further below, so here. So that play area would be provided with new equipment. There's also like a further path just where that new path would come in. There's a further path going off to the east at the moment, which leads to, it's a very rough path, and it leads over to a games court and onwards to McQueen Street, which would then provide another route into the village of Tarbert. It's not shown on the slide, but to the south of Scott Road, roughly where you've got number 1 and 2 Scott Road, there is another set of steps that leads down onto the main street, and they're existing. So the application has been subject to representation comments from 3 parties. So these objections are set out in Appendix 4 to the report. There was a further technical submission submitted by one objector to expand on their initial objection, and a detailed response to that technical submission has been prepared by the applicant, and both the submission by the party submitting the representation and the response by the applicant are contained in Appendix 5 of the report. Further, these representations are summarised in paragraph 10.2 of the report, and the key issues are set out there on the slide. So they include the location of the site, the impacts upon existing residential amenity, the ground conditions, the very hard rock, presence of peat, groundwater, the risks to the reservoir and pollution pathways from blasting of the rock, disturbance of the peat, traffic and transport, infrastructure capacity, particularly sewer capacity, water pressure, economic, social and economic environmental impacts, the loss of common grazing land for crofting, and regard has been had to all of these issues within the assessment, which is set out in your report. The risks that have been identified have been considered, as has the mitigation, and that mitigation is proposed to be secured by robust conditions which are set out in Appendix 1 to the report. The report addresses the key planning issues, and these include the principle of housing on this site per the Comhairle development strategy, the scale of the development, questions over housing priority, density, the housing mix, placemaking, how this connects with the rest of Tarbert, the provision of play space, the design of housing, consideration of residential amenity. Regard has been had to ground conditions, the nature of the rock, the requirement for blasting, and other means of rock removal, the presence of peat soils, protection of the water environment, and the management of pollution pathways and risks. Impact on landscape, given the site is within the National Scenic Area, considerations been given to natural heritage impacts, and the need to secure enhancement, biodiversity enhancement. Considerations been given to road capacity, the suitability and provision of pavements, the design of the new layout and car parking provision within the development. Consideration has also been given to the impacts on climate change, low carbon buildings, waste management and communications infrastructure, all as required by the policies of the development plan. The site, before we move on to further detail, this slide just is an aerial view, and the red lines are just giving an indication of the actual position of the site. The inset there shows the red line boundary of the site, and it's marked crudely on here, so you can see Scott Road very clearly existing. It comes up from the main road into Tarbert. So on the left hand side, down the bottom, Fiona, you can see like the Free Church of Scotland on the left hand side, the Harris Hotel on the right, with the gardens at the front. There's then the garage, which you can see the roof of to the bottom left of the slide, just slightly up, Fiona, on the left hand side. And then the road loops up all the way through, and just between the Coast Guard station and number 1 Scott Road, this is the point where it's proposed a new spur would be taken heading north. It would pass actually to the right. I think that's my red line is not quite accurate. It would pass to the right of the telecommunications mast, and it would come into this area of land that's beyond the fence line into the common grazing land. The land falls from the north, south, and it also falls from the west, or from the northwest to the southeast. Falls in 2 directions. It's typical terrain in this part of Harris, very rocky land, bedrock very close to the surface, strewn with boulders, shallow, covered with shallow peat and with isolated pockets of deep peat. To the northwest, you can see the two reservoirs. The top reservoir is above the level of the development. The bottom reservoir is on a level with the development, but consideration has been given to the levels and the risks of any pollution pathways between the proposed works and those reservoirs. The slide sets out the works that at the end of phase 1 completion, assuming consent is granted and the development is implemented. So on this slide you can see the road would be constructed, the play area would be created both within the development, the play area that exists would be upgraded, the path link through from the development, phase 1 development down to Scott Road would be created. Proposals are required for how that path over to the games court would be enhanced. And the area to the north would have been levelled, but it would be left for future development. And then you can see the extent of the houses. So basically there would be houses to the south of the new spur, and there would be houses to the north also. So there's then a series of cross sections that take you through, and before I move on to that, I'll maybe I don't know whether it'd be better with the slide here. So I think it's important for the next slide that I'll take you, if you would look at the existing houses on Scott Road. So here in the top corner there is a terrace of 4 houses. Those 4 houses will be back to back with the new development, in particular those 4 units. And the 2 houses that are at right angles, just to the left, these will be gable end on to the development. Those are the houses whose outlook is liable, will have a significant change to their outlook, and these houses in Scott Road will have an impact on their amenity during the construction phase of this development, in particular during the groundworks phase, when rock requires to be removed, processed and infill created. So if I skip to this slide. So this slide is a series of cross sections, and it's probably easier for me to go to the third slide down, the third cross section down. So, or rather, is it the second one? Sorry, I'll need to put my glasses on for this. Yeah, so it's the third one is the one that is furthest in. So it shows the back of the house on Scott Road, which you can see is 2-storey. The new houses would be single-storey and would be back to back, but you can see that the finished floor level of the new houses will effectively be at first floor level of the houses on Scott Road. So that's indicative of the level of land that requires to be raised in order to achieve a building platform. There will be an area in between. So you can see on that third slide, you can see where the boundary, or the third cross section, you can see where the boundary fence is of 21 Scott Road. There is then like a drainage ditch. There would then be an embankment, which would be landscaped, and then there would be a requirement for a 1.5 metre high fence to the back garden of these houses. in order to ensure that there is the risk of overlooking to the houses that are down below is managed. So these cross sections are identified as AA, BB, CC on the top right inset. But care has been taken to ensure that the houses that are proposed in the new development are single story, and the rooms in the houses that exist are at first floor are bedrooms, and the principal rooms in the existing houses on Scott Road face south towards the main road. So consideration has been given to the amenity. It's recognised that there will be an impact on the permanent impact on the outlook from these houses, and there will be impacts during construction on impacts from noise and disturbance from rock removal, be that through blasting, pecking or other means, and then the processing of that rock and the placement of rock to create the building platform. Then the slide gives another series of cross sections and shows both phases of development. And again, you can see at the top slide there, the image to the right shows the two-storey house on Scott Road. The yellow area shows the red area shows the extent of upfill that would be required to create the platform. And then you can see, so that would be the two sides of the street on the first phase of development, and then moving up to the next level are the level of this, there'll be similar, like another embankment, and the phase 2 houses would sit higher again. And that's the case all the way along as you move, as you move along the street, you can see like the level changes. Now, this is like a streetscape elevation, and this is taken, this is like a visualization that shows if you were standing in the middle of the first phase 1 of the. So if I go back to here, so if you were standing on the middle of that new street, so the first one is taken looking south. So you're looking towards Tarbert. So you can see the telecommunications mast there. The road has come in past the telecommunications mast to the point where it's just to the centre where there's the gap between the houses. So on the left hand side of the slide, these are the two single story blocks. Sorry if you're not at the top, staying at the top. So the two single story blocks that would be back to back with the existing houses on Scott Road. And what's kind of drawn on there in the background, albeit you wouldn't see it because it's below level, but you can see that the roof of the houses on Scott Road, or the first floor level of Scott Road, would be level with these single story houses. And then as you move along, obviously the houses, these 1.5 story houses are not, they're not backing onto another house. Then the bottom image, this is you looking north from phase 1. So what is mirrored behind here is the second phase of development where it built. So this shows the kind of level change that there will be between the first phase of development and the second phase of development, which would sit at a higher level still. Now follows just a series of photographic images. So these first two photographs show the location of the proposed new junction with Scott Road. So it would be basically created between what is the existing Coast Guard station and the house number 1 Scott Road. So there would be like a wide two-way Bellmouth junction created there with a footpath the land would rise up, the road would sweep left towards the mast. The road for the housing would go straight ahead over the rise to the site. This is the site. These are just views looking towards Scott Road from the northwest corner of the site. So you're looking east in both those views. So along the fence line basically runs on the same line as the telegraph poles that demarcates the southern extremity of the site. You can see difficult terrain, a lot of bedrock coming through, boulders through, and with, thin layers of peat, heather, some boggy pockets where there's peat. The view on the right is taken zoomed in towards the houses on Scott Road. It's taken from a footpath that exists, so there is a footpath that passes beyond the mast, leaves the land on which the mast is created, goes through the gate, and heads off across the berm at the top of the southern reservoir and onwards towards Ardhathig. That path does not form part of the current development, but it is proposed that that path would be upgraded as part of the ambitions of the community in terms of a place plan that has been prepared for Tarbert. These are the houses that are at the far end of the existing houses in Scott Road. The image on the left is 1718 Scott Road, 2021. So these are the houses that are at gable end to the new houses and would be back to back with the new development. So these are the houses whose outlook would be most affected, in the sense that the new development would be back to back with these houses and would sit at a level above them, albeit set back at a distance and with an embankment and a fence, a 1.5 metre fence, in order to protect the residential amenity. These are just a couple of views of the existing play area on Scott Road, with our requirement secured by condition for the play area here to be upgraded, which would then service the existing houses on Scott Road and the new development. There would, in addition to this, be a small area within the existing development that would be more suitable for overlooked and for use by very young children. Then this provides the kind of very narrow informal path that leads off to an existing games court to the east of the site. That games court is in the control of the community, and beyond that games court there is a tarred footpath link, albeit quite steep, which leads down to McQueen Street, and McQueen Street then takes you down past the care home into the centre of Tarbert. The picture on the left shows where the connection point would be for the proposed pedestrian link coming down from the new housing development. These trees would require to be removed. There would be a pedestrian link here. It would come on to the existing Scott Road, and that would allow pedestrians, including children, to walk down this pathway to access the games court. On the image on the right, it shows this very informal path that has either been created by the community or just evolved over time, and that's the kind of rough path that goes off up to the games court and onwards to McQueen Street. I mentioned that there is like a existing connection between the existing part of existing Scott Road and Main Street via a series of steps with a connecting path. It's quite steep. It's obviously not suitable for all accessibility, but it does provide an existing pedestrian link. These images are of the reservoirs. So on the bottom link is on the bottom, the left image is of the bottom reservoir, the right image is of the top reservoir. The developer has been to visit these reservoirs. They have prepared a hydrology study. We as officers have visited and also walked round the reservoirs and had due regard to the concerns that have been expressed to do with impact upon them. These reservoirs don't have concrete dam walls. They are basically stone embankments coming to a kind of wide berm. And there is a footpath, an existing footpath on top of the existing reservoir wall on the southern reservoir. So the image on the left shows the nature of the existing wall. So it is like an open rock finish. It's not a concrete dam wall. It's very wide and it slopes on both sides and has like a level surface on the top. The only concrete on the bottom two reservoirs, you can see at the head on the right hand image, you can see that the reservoir wall has got like a small retaining wall on the far end. The water flows naturally down the stream, passes under a bridge. There's a pipe bridge there, and you can see there's like an existing cottage at the bottom there. You can also see in that image on the right a high voltage line, and that is part of the recent development by SSEN for the upgrading of the Harris to Stornoway high voltage line. There has been some ground disturbance in the area arising from that development, and it is a proposal by this development to carry out some reinstatement to that ground and provide some biodiversity enhancement that would reduce the risk of pollution from soil being washed away. This is all part of the common grazing, and therefore it is open to stock, and the path is existing. These are some further images of around the southern loch. You can see the nature of the path on the left, passing through some very rocky terrain, very informal, but it is way marked with poles. Then runs along at the top of the southernmost reservoir, and then the image to the right is taken on the kind of, again, looking across the reservoir from the west. You can see the new hydro poles that have been put in, the twin poles carrying the high voltage line, and again you can see like the walkway along the top. Taking members to the report sets out an appraisal of the planning issues in light of the development plan policy context, has had regard to consultation comments and to all of the representations. The appraisal has concluded that the location of the proposed development would be acceptable in terms of the development plan, that this would provide new social housing in an area of high housing demand, it would make a material contribution to the local housing supply, and that would be a substantial benefit of the proposal. The housing would also likely support local services and facilities in the hinterland. Subject to conditions, and these conditions are numerous, they're robust, and they're set out in Appendix 1 to your report. It's concluded that the impacts on infrastructure, transport, natural environment, archaeology, peat, and the potential for pollution risks and pathways are considered manageable and acceptable. It's recognised that there will be harmful impacts on residential amenity, despite the robust mitigation, and that would arise from noise and disturbance from rock extraction, processing and placement, but these impacts would be temporary during the groundworks phase of the development. Members will be aware that planning applications required to be determined in accordance with provisions of the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. All matters have been taken into account, and it's concluded that the substantial benefits of the proposed development to housing supply and the modest economic benefits likely to result would outweigh the significant harm to residential amenity due to the noise and disturbance caused by the preparation of the site. Overall, the proposal is considered acceptable and would accord with the development plan as a whole. It's concluded that there are no material considerations to justify a decision other than in accordance with the development plan. The recommendation is for approval, subject to the development being carried out in accordance with the conditions that are set out in Appendix 1 to the report. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Maura, for that concise and informative report. Well written. And as you say, the recommendation is for approval. Can I invite any questions from anybody on the panel? Mr. Finnegan.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask from the distance from the end. What's the nearest distance from the nearest house to the reservoir? I can't really be sure what actually is on the plans. Do you have any idea roughly what it is?
It is set out in the appendix, in the response in Appendix 5, which I'll need to bring up. And I don't know if you have it off the top of your head.
I don't off the top of my head, sorry.
Just give me a moment, I'll just find that in the appendix.
Sorry, there's a lot of them.
Okay, sorry, but thank you, Chair. So, it confirms that there's no rock extraction within 50 metres of the reservoir or the lower portion of the watercourse. And all the points are at least 85 to 95 metres away. So, point 1 is on the road. So, there are no houses. There are no houses within 50 metres of the reservoir.
Can I follow up, Mr. Finnegan?
Yeah, it's just regarding the mitigation policies. Have there been contact? Have they been discussed with the distillery in terms of, or is that really what the contractors, not the contractors, but the planners of the site have come up with in terms of mitigation?
They haven't been discussed with the developer, but they are robust mitigation measures which have
Yeah.
been put in place. So if you look, if I can take you to Appendix 1,
Yeah,
Condition 5, first of all, requires that there will be no rock extraction until a statement of the methodology and the extraction has been submitted and approved. Then Condition 6 covers the actual blasting itself in detail as to what limits are allowed. And Condition 7 requires that surveys are carried out. So we're satisfied that while there is a risk, the risks are capable of mitigation via the conditions. And those conditions are robust because it is recognised that it is exceptionally hard rock. And there does need to be management of that.
yeah. For myself, obviously, it's a real context here. I'm in support of the housing. Generally, we need it. We've got to have it, and it's absolutely critical. But I'm also aware of the situation with the distillery, where it's a major employer in Harris, and also it's an actual the serious investment has been put into that into the distillery and into the actual business. And I'm just wondering if it's possible that we can add a condition that says that as the mitigation is in discussion with the distillery, so that they're working together to look at how they can most mitigate the effects on the reservoirs.
Chair, I don't think it would be reasonable to seek to agree that, I mean, we're certainly happy to share that, but it's certainly, I would not be recommending that it be, that it be subject to approval by anybody other than our own advisors, which would be our own environmental health. We are satisfied that the applicant has brought on board consultants. We're satisfied that blast design nowadays is carried out by specialist blast engineers. We're happy to share that information, but for information, not for their approval.
Coming back, yeah, I just would agree with that. That can't be a deciding factor, but certainly I would like as the project's going on, that they work very closely with the distillery in terms of looking at how they can best mitigate any concerns as a condition, rather than, I mean, I'm not trying to get it stopped, because I actually want it to go through as well. I recognise important, but I want to try and reduce the mitigation on the distillery as much as possible.
I think the raft of conditions in the approvals here is probably one of the biggest I've seen in the list. Mitigate against all the concerns that the various people have on this development going ahead. I think that they'll be working closely with the developers anyway.
Yeah, I think the planning has to strike a fair balance between, what's in the public interest. So it's, our assessment has looked both at the evidence provided by the applicant as developer, on behalf of the developer, and the representations that have been submitted by third parties. We have given due regard to the representations that have been received by a private party, albeit it is acknowledged that it is an economic generator, an economic developer, but the planning conditions are advised to you as being robust and sufficient to mitigate the impacts. And it would be for us, as the planning authority, to take technical advice from our advisors, not from a party who is opposed to development. And we're not dismissing in any way their concerns. And nor has the applicant. The applicant has acknowledged the risks and has come back to confirm how those risks will be mitigated. Those risks, that mitigation is then secured by condition.
Yeah,
that'll be the normal course of events.
Yeah, because just what I wanted to say is I didn't want it just going ahead and them not having any look at what and in being involved in some shape or form in terms of just making sure that is mitigated as much as possible with the conditions, So that's really the reason. It was instead of just so they're actually included. Well, not included in terms of decision making, no, but in terms of how that can be that's been managed in the best way.
Thank you for that, Mr. Flanagan. As a local representative, I wanted to give you as much opportunity as possible to get your concerns across. Go to Mustafa now.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, Morag, for this comprehensive presentation. I think this development is very welcome, and I hope it'll bring a lot of babies and a boom of children around the area as well, so which we need, I think. Morag, it was just a question around, I think, the Hammerhead access to the rest of the common grazing. I think obviously that'll bring agricultural activities around the scheme. Will that be using the main road, or will it have access separate, or like big tractors and things? Will they be driving around the scheme to get to access to the rest of the grazing? And at the same time, just ask about the additional play areas proportionally to the site and to the expected population. Would that be sufficient? I was looking at it at the design. It looks a wee bit small to me, but and the last one, so I just ask them all together. So they, in terms of number 21 Scott's Road there, the raised area from the new building, considering that Scots Road will be lower. Will that bring some flooding issue or permanent wetness or something, on the road? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hussein. So the first one, the common grazing, I mean, the area of common grazing to the north of Tarbert is vast, and there are multiple entry points onto the common grazing. There's obviously an existing point of access there. It's via a gate, which is in pretty poor condition, tied with rope. There's certainly no indication visually on the ground that is used for machinery in any way. It's more liable to be, a pedestrian, an access for pedestrian, but it is like a field gate. It is a standard field gate, and that access point would be retained to the same standard with a new gate. The play area, national planning policy requires regard to be had to the nature of play space that's available for children to play outdoors. This was the subject of detailed discussion with the developer. The conclusion was that there was the existing play area on Scott Road is fairly sizable, but its condition is poor, and it made sense for that play area to be the subject of upgrading as part of this scheme with access, part of this development with access provided to it, and for there to be like a smaller area immediately within the development that would be suitable for use with mums with tots with toddlers. So it's more of a kind of green space. It's located centrally within the development area, and we're satisfied that together with improved accessibility and improved facilities within the existing play area, that it would meet the policy tests. And then I've already forgotten the third point. Flooding. Yeah, so the flooding of Scott Road. So there is an existing drainage channel running all the way along behind the existing houses at Scott Road. So that drainage channel would be improved. It would be retained, and it would pass through, like take the surface water down into a suds area where the flow would then be managed before it would discharged into the stream.
So there is no risk of in heavy periods of rain or continuous rain that will flood at least the gardens or whatever of 21 Scots Road. Okay.
No, at the moment it is free. At the moment it's free flowing. There's no kind of mitigation. But when the development if the development goes ahead, then there has to be like a proper surface water drainage scheme implemented that will attenuate flows and avoid the risk of flooding to the neighbouring property.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pennigan again.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just that regarding that thing about the drainage, there's an existing issue there already, and that I've actually been doing constituency work regarding clearing that drain out. So I actually think that Morag is right. I think it would actually improve it. I think it will actually improve it because it would be a proper drainage system with proper drain. At the moment, it's a big gully, and there have been issues there with the gardens flooding in heavy rain. So I actually think it would actually improve that situation.
Any more questions? Can I remind you that this will be considered again tomorrow at the council, full council. Kenny. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, but obviously I have quite an interest in this, being the other Harris councillor, and like my colleague, I fully support this. It's a crucial development for the future of Harris. notes the concerns of the distillery, who are a major employer in Harris, but the shortage of housing has been stifling economic development throughout Harris for years, and this long overdue development is really welcome. And thank you, Morag, for your report and for also clarifying. One of the questions I had reading it was, is the extensive list of conditions standard? And to know that it's not shows just the robustness of the work that's gone in. Yeah, I appreciate the distillery's concerns, although when you point out that the ground to the west of it has already been disturbed by the SSEN poles, and bearing in mind that the prevailing winds are southeasterly, then once we get rid of these cold easterlies we've had, I would expect that most of the dust will be blown to the east rather than towards the loch anyway. And given the conditions in place, I think I'm fairly satisfied that there are sufficient conditions in place to mitigate the distillery. I'm sure the distillery already have pretty good filters in place, bearing in mind that that's open access for anyone, for walkers, sheep, anything falling into the reservoir could affect that water already. So some rock dust is that going to make a huge difference? So I'm grateful for the report, and as I said, fully supportive of it.
Thank you. I also thought Scotch on the Rocks was very, very good anyway. Okay, then I think we've decided that we're happy to go with, well, then as far as this board is concerned, that we agree recommendations at 3.1 to agree to recommend to the Comhairle tomorrow that the application be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the appendix to the report. Agreed? Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the opposition for the excellent work that you've done bringing this to us. And here's to the next time, whenever that will be. Thank you.